she fled from her father, yet was already carrying his child. A secret that lay buried for decades in the remote Ozark Mountains, within a community as isolated as the souls who lived there. This is the tale of Martha Holloway, a young woman whose fate was sealed before her birth into a family line where the boundaries of kinship had been blurred for generations. Our account opens in 1952, when the Ozark Mountains of southern Missouri held hundreds of secluded communities, many nearly cut off from a modernizing America. In one such forgotten valley, about 40 kilometers from Branson, stood a property locally known as the Holloway Clearing. 3 generations of the Holloway family had built a largely self-sufficient existence there, with scant outside contact. The 200-acre homestead was ruled by Samuel Holloway, a 43-year-old widower whose wife, Elizabeth, had died 5 years prior during the birth of their 6th son, who also did not survive. Rare visitors described Samuel as an imposing figure, with a thick beard and grey eyes that seldom showed emotion. His word was law on the property he shared with his 5 surviving children. Few knew the Holloways already carried the burden of generations of cousin marriage. Samuel himself was the son of first cousins, as was his late wife. This pattern, begun in the 19th century to keep land and wealth within the family, had become an unquestioned custom, even as signs of genetic issues emerged. Of Samuel's children, 16-year-old Martha was considered the most beautiful and healthy. Petite, with long brown hair and deep blue eyes against fair skin, Martha displayed an intelligence and vitality that seemed to escape the genetic fate affecting her younger siblings. John, 14, had severe learning difficulties. Thomas, 12, suffered from a spinal malformation that limited his movement. Rebecca, 10, seemed normal but rarely spoke. And the youngest, Elijah, 8, was born with fused fingers, limiting his dexterity. The family's isolation was geographical, cultural, and social. The Holloway children were homeschooled by Samuel, who had an education equivalent to a high school level. Their religion was a version of Christianity with Samuel as the supreme interpreter. Contact beyond the clearing was limited to his monthly supply trips and rare family visits to church at Easter and Christmas. In April 1952, this fragile balance was disrupted. The local Reverend, Robert McIntyre, persuaded Samuel to let Martha attend youth activities at church, arguing she needed appropriate female companionship. Reluctantly, Samuel agreed, perhaps out of respect for religious authority, or seeing a chance for a respectable connection. For 2 months, Martha glimpsed a world beyond the Holloways. She met other girls, learned songs, joined picnics, and, crucially, encountered ideas different from her father's. Through these interactions, she began to sense something deeply wrong at home. In June 1952, Martha confided in the Reverend's wife, Sarah Bennett. "Sometimes when my pa comes back from town, he looks at me in a way that gives me goosebumps," Martha said. "It's like he's seeing me, but not as a daughter." Worried, Sarah asked if Samuel had done anything inappropriate. Martha responded only with silence and tears. Sarah promised to speak with the Reverend. The next Sunday, however, Samuel announced Martha could no longer attend church, citing home responsibilities. When Reverend McIntyre visited to intervene, he was met with a shotgun and an order never to return. In the following weeks, nearby residents reported hearing shouts from the Holloway property at night. In mid-July, a neighbor's son saw Martha washing clothes in the stream. He noticed bruises on her arms and a despondent look, a stark contrast to the lively girl from church. In late July, during a violent storm, Martha vanished. Samuel appeared in town the next morning, visibly agitated, asking if anyone had seen his daughter. A search found nothing. Samuel publicly accused Reverend McIntyre of putting dangerous ideas in her head and possibly aiding her escape, accusations the Reverend denied. The truth began to surface 2 weeks later when Martha was found unconscious on a roadside over 80 kilometers away, outside Springfield. At the hospital, she was dehydrated, malnourished, and, doctors discovered, approximately 2 months pregnant. Subscribe if you haven't already. Martha's story reveals family secrets the system tried to bury for decades. Only here will you find previously unrevealed details about real cases authorities preferred to forget. When Martha regained consciousness at Springfield Hospital in August 1952, she initially refused to speak. The assigned social worker, Eleanor Thompson, 37, known for her patience, spent days building trust. She was like a wounded animal, Eleanor would later write in her diary, made public after her death in 1998. Her eyes were constantly alert. It took a week before I could sit by her bed without her trembling. Authorities identified Martha's family through fragmented records and Reverend McIntyre's testimony. Samuel demanded her return, citing his rights as a father. During her second week in the hospital, Martha began sharing her story with Eleanor, between tears and long silences. She told of being locked in the basement when visitors came after she stopped attending church. At night, after everyone slept, Martha's account would often trail off. Over time, the full picture emerged. Samuel had begun visiting her room at night, starting with just watching, then escalating to forced intimacy, accompanied by threats to her younger siblings if she resisted. He said that was how families kept the blood pure, Martha told Eleanor. She explained her own mother had also been her aunt, calling it normal in the Mountain families. The most disturbing revelation was her reason for fleeing that July night. I heard Pa talking to Uncle Jeremiah about marrying me to my cousin Walter when he came back from the army. I knew I'd never escape that cycle. Martha had planned for weeks, hiding food and spare cents. During the storm, while the family was distracted, she slipped out her bedroom window with only the clothes she wore and a small bundle. The case presented a complex legal dilemma in 1952. While Martha's accusations were grave, the social stigma around such family matters was immense in conservative rural communities. The district prosecutor, Howard Jenkins, opted for caution. Instead of immediate criminal charges, difficult to prove without physical evidence, he sought a temporary protection order barring Samuel from contacting Martha. Judge William Cruthers granted the order and mandated a broader investigation into the welfare of the other Holloway children. The investigation uncovered a generational pattern of consanguineous relationships dating back at least 4 generations. Records showed multiple marriages between first and second cousins, and in 2 cases, uncle-niece relationships formalized through sham weddings. Dr. Harold Winters, who examined Martha's siblings, documented conditions consistent with prolonged inbreeding, cognitive disabilities, physical malformations, and atypical development. A clear danger for any future offspring, he noted. As the investigation continued, Martha remained in state care. In September 1952, upon confirming her pregnancy, she attempted suicide by ingesting cleaning products. She said she couldn't bring another deformed creature into the world, recalled Sister Mary Catherine, supervisor at the temporary home. That the blood was contaminated. After this, Martha was transferred to a psychiatric institution in St. Louis. Doctors debated how to proceed with the pregnancy, as termination was largely illegal and morally condemned in 1952. Meanwhile, Samuel Holloway finally faced legal consequences. On October 5, 1952, Prosecutor Jenkins filed formal charges of child abuse, parental neglect, and improper conduct, terms that veiled the true nature of the crimes. The community reacted with shock, disbelief, and, in some quarters, defense of Samuel. He's always been a God-fearing man, one neighbor told the local paper. Others, particularly women, acknowledged something had always seemed amiss. Those children never smiled, one church lady noted. The winter of 1952-53 was harsh in the Ozarks. 3 dramas unfolded simultaneously. In St. Louis, 17-year-old Martha, now for months pregnant, cycled between depression and moments of clarity. Under the care of Dr. Elena Blackwell, she began art therapy. Her early drawings were of dark, claustrophobic scenes, but gradually images of open doors and paths emerged. In a significant step, she asked Dr. Blackwell if her baby could be normal, despite the circumstances of its conception. Martha's siblings were placed in different foster homes. Their adjustment was difficult, marked by behaviors from prolonged isolation. Remarkably, they communicated with each other through a private system of gestures. Rebecca, the 10-year-old who rarely spoke, began talking to the Reverend's daughter, describing the special games her father made Martha play. Samuel, in jail, maintained his innocence, claiming religious freedom and paternal rights. His lawyer, Clayton Morris, argued the case attacked traditional family practices. In January 1953, a search of the Holloway property revealed a hidden compartment containing family documents, including a diary from Samuel's great-grandfather, Josiah, 1865 to 1883. Its entries revealed a disturbing philosophy: the outside world is contaminated, but we Holloways will keep our blood pure. Every marriage within the family strengthens our legacy. One entry described confining a 14-year-old daughter for 3 weeks until she agreed to marry her uncle. If your heart aches for Martha's silent pain, comment now. Martha deserves justice. Show you see beyond appearances. On March 10, 1953, Samuel Holloway's trial began, attracting regional press. Prosecutor Jenkins focused on provable aspects: the children's forced isolation, educational deprivation, poor living conditions, and physical mistreatment. Expert witnesses explained the dangers of prolonged inbreeding. Martha's testimony was presented via a pre-recorded deposition to spare her the trauma of facing her father. The defense attacked her credibility and framed Samuel as a strict but devoted father protecting his children from a corrupt world. Samuel's brother, Jeremiah, testified, defending their family practices. "Where I grew up, you marry who you know and trust. And who do you know better than your own family?" After a 7-day trial and 5 hours of deliberation, the jury found Samuel guilty on all counts. He was sentenced to 20 years in prison, with no parole for at least 15 years. Judge Wilson stated, "The right of a parent finds its absolute limits when it endangers the physical, mental, and moral well-being of minors." On March 26, 1953, Martha gave birth to a baby girl who showed no immediate physical abnormalities. Against the heir's pressure for adoption, Dr. Blackwell advocated for Martha to keep her child, arguing separation would cause further trauma. The court granted provisional custody. Martha named her daughter Hope. Martha was later moved to a transitional home for young mothers, where she showed remarkable dedication to her studies and her daughter. She also remained deeply concerned about her siblings. A case conference in May 1953 decided the long-term future for the Holloway children. Given their specialized needs, permanent placement in appropriate institutions was recommended, with provisions for sibling contact, a standard approach of the time, though later criticized. Martha accepted this with resolve. "They were already invisible for too long," she said. In September 1953, Hope showed subtle developmental delays, possibly neurological. This news deeply affected Martha, but she remained steadfast. No matter what happens to Hope, she will never know what it is to be invisible or disposable. She will know she is loved just as she is. In November 1953, Samuel's brother, Jeremiah, was arrested after his own wife, Catherine, was hospitalized with injuries she confessed were from him. Their 13-year-old daughter, Beth, revealed similar abuses, justified as keeping the family tradition. Correspondence between Samuel and Jeremiah was discovered, explicitly detailing their beliefs. One letter from Samuel read, "I am preparing Martha to continue our pure lineage. If Walter doesn't return from the army in time, it may be better for me to get the next generation." For Martha, this was both validation and a source of sadness for her cousin Beth. She wrote Beth a compassionate letter, a document later noted for its wisdom: "Dear Beth, what happened was not your fault. You are not contaminated or ruined. A world is possible where we will decide who we will be." By the summer of 1954, Martha had secured a job as an administrative assistant at a medical clinic in Columbia, Missouri. She balanced work, caring for Hope, and monthly visits to her institutionalized brothers. Hope, while needing therapy, was a cheerful child. In October 1954, Reverend and Mrs. McIntyre offered to adopt Rebecca and Elijah. After much deliberation, Martha supported the adoption, on the condition she maintain regular contact. The adoption was finalized in April 1955. John and Thomas remained at the Hadley Institute, where John developed woodworking skills and Thomas underwent surgeries and rehabilitation. Martha visited them faithfully with Hope. In November 1955, Martha received a disturbing letter from Samuel in prison, still claiming their special mission. She reported it, obtained a restraining order, and saw it as proof of how far she had come. "He still believes he has power over me. But the truth is he has no place in my life." Later that year, Martha legally changed her and Hope's surname to Freeman. It's a name we can carry proudly. The following years brought stability. Martha advanced in her career, eventually becoming a social services coordinator. Hope grew into a happy child with a talent for music and art. Rebecca and Elijah thrived with the McIntyres. John and Thomas found purpose within their institutional care. In 1962, a decade after her escape, Martha, now 26, gave an anonymous speech at a child abuse prevention conference. The tragedy was not only what happened inside those walls, she said, but also the silence of the community. When we protect the right of families to isolate themselves from all scrutiny, we are not protecting freedom. We are potentially protecting abuse. The Ozark Mountains still hold many secrets. Martha Holloway Freeman's story is remarkable not just for her escape, but for her determination to build a new life and advocate for change. Her courage created ripples that helped shape child protection policies. Hope Freeman learned the full story as an adult. Reflecting later, she said, "The story of how I came into the world is not my story. It is her story, her courage. My story began when she decided the past would not define the future." Check if you're already subscribed to this channel. This true story reveals how isolated communities have hidden crimes for generations. By knowing these secrets, we can prevent history from repeating. If you've watched this far, you're invested. Leave a comment saying, "I watched here, so I can know who truly appreciates these stories." Please like and share so more people learn of this remarkable case from the Ozark Mountains. Remember, understanding the past is key to breaking these cycles. Martha's courage reminds us that even in the darkest circumstances, a path to the light always exists.